Today I'm finishing up my examination of the worst list of questions for atheists I've seen. It's called Questions to Ask an Atheist, provides you with 100 questions to ask an atheist. As it seems, it's not actually about talking to atheists, but talking to Christians who might or maybe or could talk to atheists. It's on a website called Voice in the Wilderness Ministries that was run by this guy, Philip Del Rey, who passed away in 2021. So he can't learn anything new, but we're going forward anyway because this stuff can never die. The page doesn't end with questions, by the way. There's more atheist bashing after the questions for atheists, I guess to help the Christian in their walk. So I might do another video to finish out the page. Section 3 is on science, and as I'm not a scientist, I might not know every answer, and I might not state things as accurately as an actual expert in the field would. But I contend we don't need to have all the answers to science to be atheists. The believer has to offer evidence that their God did the scientific doohickey they claim. I heard doohickey as a technical term. Sorry for going with the heavy jargon. Let's go. Hi, my name is Scarlett, and I'm an atheist and skeptic, and I find lists of questions for atheists interesting. Pretty often, I think Christians are banking on people not being super eloquent in the moment or being unsure of a concept so that the Christian can use that doubt to pop Jesus into your mind. In terms of the Abrahamic faiths, the Judeo-Christian Muslim deity is a creator one, so they want to harness all of science to demonstrate their faith. If you don't know exactly how to describe some natural process like the origin of life or evolution, their God can claim victory forever. Well, they can claim it for him, I guess. As I mentioned, I'm not a scientist, so I'm only going to give my own layperson's perspective. If you want to know more about a field, the one in question, I suggest you go read a book on it or take a class or something. And if science still doesn't know, Yahweh doesn't win by default. Somebody has to establish that a deity was actually required. All right, enough of the preamble, y'all. We're going. Question 1. Try to imagine nothing exists. No Earth, sun, moon, stars, or galaxies. There are no elements such as carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, or oxygen. No such things as time, space, or matter. No universe, no God. There is nothing. If there was ever a time when nothing but nothing existed, then what would exist now? Well, first of all, this really isn't a science question. This is more of a philosophical question because from a scientific perspective, these things actually do exist. The second thing I would say is you are assuming that nothingness is some kind of default state and then something appeared. My understanding of physics is it doesn't make any sense to ask what happened before that time began with the instantiation of our universe. I don't understand all that. This is just what science has come up with. But while this might be something fun to take a gummy and ponder all of this stuff, it really has very little to do with how science is conducted. Let's move on because we have some sub-questions. A, there's one thing that all scientists, philosophers, and theologians agree on, and it's this. You only have two choices. Either God is eternal and uncreated, or matter is eternal and uncreated, right? And I'm going to answer, I don't know. There might be other options in there. I'm just going to leave it at that. B, Einstein's theory of relativity, which is a mathematical equation, math being a perfect science, provided proof that the universe and time itself had a beginning. Since we know that nothing comes from nothing, what option does that leave you? I'm not really quite sure what the question is asking. While it's true that our universe had a beginning, that doesn't mean that there was something before, because that might not make any sense. This to me seems to be name-dropping Einstein and then claiming that math is a perfect science, whatever that means, and calling it a day and thinking that since I don't know the answer, he's right by default. All right, let's go on to part C. Einstein's discovery revealed that we live in a three-dimensional world, time, space, and matter, which is energy. Interestingly, the Bible starts out, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning, that's time. God created, that's energy. The heavens, that's space, and the earth, that's matter. How do you suppose the Bible got that right? I think you're stretching the meaning of these words. And to be honest, I don't know that Einstein discovered that we lived in a three-dimensional world. I think we all knew that. I'm not going to go into Einstein's discovery, but I think it was more than knowing that we lived in a three-dimensional world or that time existed. But to say that the Bible got that right is really, really stretching the meanings of words. If the material universe is all that there is and all there will ever be, as Carl Sagan claimed, I'm just name dropping again, then why is the material universe governed by immaterial laws? I think you're messing up what a concept is. These laws are concepts. So in that way, they are immaterial, and I don't know how they would be otherwise, because we've observed the universe and we look at how things work and we translate that into equations and math and numbers and all of that good stuff to describe it. I don't know what else you want from this one. A, where did these laws, not suggestions, come from? I think somebody doesn't understand what a law in science is, that this is not the same law as a stop sign or different rules that we've come up with in societies. These are descriptive. We don't need a deity to order that gravity works a certain way. The gravity just works that way. B, don't these laws show power, authority, design, and mathematical precision beyond anything man can conceive of? I don't even know what you're getting at. Like, there are powerful forces. I don't know what authority means in this case. I know people talk about things looking designed, but that is, we're always looking for agency. We as humans, we look for agency behind what's going on. And that mathematical precision, like, we developed the symbols for math to make things precise. So I don't know why you think this is beyond people. We've observed the universe and we have come up with ways to demonstrate what is going on in a fairly precise way. You don't need anything beyond that. Number 3, how and when did life begin? I am not an origin of life person. You can look that stuff up. Not going to touch it here. I don't know exactly when. My understanding is there were chemical processes that kicked off life with things like RNA and DNA, as much as I know. A, how do you know that? Well, I just said I didn't, but you can look stuff up. B, what existed before that? There were all kinds of things in the universe, like stars were being created and our planet was accreting from some disk of matter that was orbiting the sun. So stuff existed. C, if at one time nothing existed, how could anything exist now? I don't think that there is any sense in saying at one time nothing existed. My understanding is that time began with our universe, at least time as we know it. All of the laws came to existence at the expansion of the singularity. I think Christians just assume a state of nothingness because that's what the Bible said. There was nothing, there was void, and then God created stuff, but that's not what science says. D, where did the chemicals come from for life to begin? Well, from what I understand, all of this stuff was created in stars, and I don't understand the whole processes, but that's all we needed to get this stuff going, the natural chemical processes. E, what are the odds of them coming together by chance to form life from non-living matter? I'm going to say that I don't know the odds, and it really doesn't matter because we're here. And then there's this FYI, using the laws of mathematical probability, the odds of the random assembly of genes, both physical and chemical, coming together for spontaneous generation to occur is not within the realm of possibility. Well, it happened. By the way, we're misusing spontaneous generation, and we're going to go on in the next section to continue to abuse this, so I'm going to reference it then. Number 4, do you believe in the resurrection of the dead? What do you mean by resurrection? I think that medical professionals can reanimate some people who have flatlined. Pretty sure that's not what you mean, though. You probably mean something magical, like a dude that was dead for a couple of days walking out of a tomb. And I don't know that we are capable of reviving necrotic tissue as of yet, but let's keep a lookout in that science. Hey, why not? Well, I did say some people can be resuscitated under some circumstances, but except for magic claims, I don't know that we can revive necrotic tissue. B, what is, spontaneous generation? I just love these misplaced commas. We have an FYI. Spontaneous generation is the idea that living cells sprang spontaneously from non-living matter, something evolutionists must believe. Okay, so while that is a fairly accurate description of spontaneous generation, it is wrong to say it is something that science upholds, and we're going to skip over this use of evolutionist. It's a dumb word, but they're never going to let it go, so we just got to deal with that. For people who don't know, by the way, back in olden times, there were people who noted things like maggots appearing on meat, and they thought that the maggots just appeared from the meat. That was spontaneous generation. It was later discovered that flies laid eggs on the meat, and then those became maggots. So because of that discovery, the idea of spontaneous generation was discarded. It is no longer a scientific idea. What scientists now study is the origin of life. Sometimes you hear abiogenesis, and that posits that life arose from organic compounds on the early Earth. That is, there were chemical processes involved in the emergence of RNA and DNA. There we go. C. How is spontaneous generation significantly different from the idea of the resurrection of the dead? So, ignoring spontaneous generation, okay, because I think what he means is abiogenesis. Origin of life is not about the reanimation of necrotic tissues. It is about the chemical processes that produced living cells. So it is significantly different from the resurrection of the dead. So we have several questions on spontaneous generation. Letter D, has it ever been observed in a laboratory? E, what evidence do you have to support the idea? F, since spontaneous generation has never been observed in a laboratory, how can it be called a scientific fact? And G, since it requires faith to believe that, I guess, spontaneous generation, how is that significantly different from religion? So instead of answering these, because again, spontaneous generation has been discredited, I want to make a few observations about lines of questioning like this. First of all, remember we are supposed to be talking to atheists who may or may not have any knowledge of origin of life studies. And their incomprehension is neither here nor there about the existence of a god or gods. Someone's ignorance on a topic means nothing about the facts involved in it. Second, I think this line of questions really reveals the person's laziness in terms of researching a topic. I mean, origin of life is an active research area for which videos on YouTube exist, and even the old Wikipedia can help you understand. Third, I also think that this line of questioning reveals the lack of imagination in the questioner. This person can only imagine their biblical account of creation where God created everything from nothing. So the earth in this scenario was a rock with water, and then poof, there were creatures. From a scientific point of view, our earth formed in an accretion disk. There were and have been active chemical processes throughout, asteroids hitting the earth and bringing other elements down, and somewhere in those gazillion chemical processes, life formed. And once it did, it began evolving. It's not like the earth was a rock and then poof, a single cell appeared and had to go in search of another cell. I mean, you've got to try to really imagine what the early earth was like, and these people can't imagine it. And so to answer G on faith, faith is not required because what science does is goes and finds evidence for things. Origin of life studies may seem like a narrative to people who are not actively involved in it, but for scientists who do research in it, this is a field with real evidence, real experiments, and peer-reviewed studies. All right, let's finish out these questions on spontaneous generation. H, if scientists ever were successful in producing a living cell from non-living matter, wouldn't that only serve to confirm that intelligence was necessary to produce it? No, because the way they would set up their experiment would show that these chemicals could react in a way that life could emerge. I mean, yes, they're making the experiment happen, but they're trying to recreate what life was like in an early Earth without any kind of intelligence. So you just don't understand what's going on. 5, can you explain the differences between a hypothesis, a theory, and a scientific law? We don't even need to do this because he did it for us. FYI, a hypothesis is an educated guess based on observation, but has not been proven. A scientific theory summarizes a hypothesis when that hypothesis has been supported with repeated testing. A theory is valid as long as there is no evidence to dispute it. A law generalizes a body of observations. At the time it is made, no exceptions have been found to that law. Some scientific laws, or laws of nature, include the law of gravity, the laws of motion, and the laws of thermodynamics. The first thing I want to say is I'm not sure why this is on a list of questions for atheists. As good of a question it is for anybody to know the difference between these things. Why is this specifically on a questions for atheists? It doesn't tell us anything about the truth of God or anything like that. The second thing I will say is I went out to look up some of these definitions, and I think he cribbed this off a website. This is almost word for word on ThoughtCo, so I don't know that he exactly understands these definitions, and I'm not sure why that's here. It's just kind of random. So let's go on to question 6. Can you explain the difference between microevolution and macroevolution? I know this is very important for creationists, but my understanding is evolution does not use these. As creationists use these, microevolution is simply variation in a species, and macroevolution will be change from one species to another. But it's not really scientific. A, what scientific evidence is there that macroevolution has occurred? I love that you would just ask a lay person this. There is a lot of evidence that macroevolution has occurred, and you can look at the difference in the genome between chimpanzees and humans, for example, that shows that was a change in speciation. B, can you provide one observable example of macroevolution occurring today? I can't, but I'm sure that if I looked something up, I could. Again, why are you having a conversation about this with lay people? C, why don't we see hundreds and even thousands of transitional forms of animals or humans walking around today? Well, you do. Everything is a transitional form. We don't know what it's going to evolve into. D, if man evolved from apes, why do apes still exist? If Protestants came from Catholics, why do Catholics still exist? I mean, this question just cannot die, I guess. You cannot debunk it enough. E, since macroevolution has never been observed, how can it be taught as science? We've established that it has been observed. Just because a person can't tell you one example, if you talk to a biologist, you would find an example. I mean, I don't have one off the top of my head. I could look something up, but there are too many of these questions to look at. 7. What did Darwin say the fossil record would certainly reveal if his theory of macroevolution were true? I don't care what Darwin says. There are tons of scientists active that use evolution that actually work on evolution, so it really doesn't matter. A, isn't it true that Darwin said in essence that his theory of macroevolution would stand or fall on what the fossil record would show? Don't know, don't care. B, how do you account for the fact that there are virtually no fossils showing any intermediate forms? Well, there are. C, isn't it true that the fossil record reveals fully formed kinds in their own right? Everything always is a fully formed kind, whatever that means in its own right. It's its own being, but it is also transitional. Both things are true at the same time. Again, stop looking for crocoduck. 8, can you explain the laws of thermodynamics? Yeah, I don't think I could do that really well. Talk to a scientist. FYI, many atheists believe that matter and energy originated from nothing. The first law of thermodynamics states matter and energy are neither created nor destroyed. Yeah, the laws of thermodynamics describe our universe after it has already formed. It has nothing to do with the formation of the universe. According to Isaac Asimov, another way of stating the second law is the universe is constantly becoming more disorderly. According to the second law, energy could not be eternal because the universe is running down like a clock. I don't think this is a great way of understanding the second law. I mean, I am not an expert on this, but entropy and disorder are different things. 9, have the laws of thermodynamics ever been proven wrong? I don't know, probably not. A, how do you explain the clear contradiction between the laws of thermodynamics, which are among the most well-established laws of science, and the theory of macroevolution? I don't even know what you're talking about here. I think you don't know what you're talking about. 10, what is energy? Then we have a sub A. Astronomers tell us that there are 100 billion galaxies in the quote-unquote known universe and hundreds of billions of stars in each galaxy. According to the laws of thermodynamics, if energy can neither be created nor destroyed, where did all the energy in the universe come from? Came from the Big Bang. Still don't have any clue what this has to do with being an atheist, and I don't know how this establishes the truth of your God. 11. Why is it that the vast majority of us die between the ages of 40 and 80, no matter where we live or what we eat? We have another point A. If evolution were true, why don't we see some people who live in relatively unpolluted areas living to be 200 to 300 years old? This has more to do with biology. It has nothing to do with unpolluted areas. It has to do with our cells and how our bodies age. This is just like a non sequitur as far as I'm concerned. 12. What do we know about cells today that Darwin did not? Darwin didn't know that much about cells, I think. FYI, Darwin believed that life could have originated by chance, in large part because he mistakenly believed that cells were very simple life forms. All right, so is there a question? A. So then, was Darwin correct in his assessment of the simplicity of cells? I don't think so. I don't know. I'm not an expert on cells. B, since Darwin was wrong about cells, which are the basic building blocks of life, how does that affect his theory of macroevolution? Just because he didn't know about cells doesn't mean he could not have established his theory of macroevolution. This is another kind of non sequitur, like who cares? 13, logic and mathematics are abstract principles that have been discovered rather than invented. We cannot do science, communicate, or navigate this world without them. They appear to stand outside of nature to describe and measure it. As Albert Einstein said, the most incomprehensible thing about the world is that it is comprehensible. Is there a question? We just name-dropping Einstein again? 14, what is the source of math and logic? The existence of this remarkably fine-tuned universe aside, how is it that we have these languages of reality to so elegantly describe and interact with it? Like, these are quotes, but I don't know who said them. And the fact that we can describe the workings of the universe with precision and elegance, if you want to say that, economy, all that kind of stuff, that is just neither here nor there in terms of where this stuff came from. That doesn't establish where anything came from. We're the ones who came up with the ways of expressing what is going on, the processes of the universe. 15. For more than 50 years, scientists from the SETI program, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, have been using radio telescopes to send out radio signals across the universe, hoping to receive radio transmissions back. If these scientists ever received a radio signal with a pattern as simple as the musical notes from the children's song, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, How I Wonder What You Are, they would unashamed, unabashedly, without fear or reservation, proudly announce to the world that they have positively identified intelligent life in outer space. Would they? I don't know. They might just say they found a pattern that's very interesting and they're searching more. A repeated pattern that simple coming from something or someone they have never seen would rule out random chance because coded information requires intelligence. Yet these same scientists can look at the pattern found in a cell's DNA, knowing that within every cell there is a code with 3 billion bits of information that not only determine your genetic makeup, but continually instruct your cell's behavior, then turn around and deny that this is the result of an intelligent designer. How do you account for that? Well, music is something we know that people create. So if they heard a tune like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, which is actually not that simple, it's actually more complex than that, they might have reason to think that somebody wrote that music and sent it across the universe, especially if they couldn't find some natural source like a star that did that. Whereas we have seen the way DNA reproduces and it doesn't seem to need a creator for that. You're positing a creator. Anyway, last question in the science. Do you think this could be the missing link? And below it, this page is kind of a shit show because something else starts, but some media is missing and there's a question mark. And underneath the question mark, it reads, once I was a tadpole beginning to begin, then I was a frog with my tail tucked in, then I was a monkey in a banana tree, now I'm a professor with a PhD. And I guess that's just a poke at professors. I have no idea what was there, but I'll tell you, if he thinks that evolution is one creature changed radically from one being to another, he doesn't understand what evolution is. Well, I don't know how well I did on these science questions, how well I explained anything. None of it actually gets anywhere near establishing why a god would be needed. It's more of he doesn't understand science, or the little things he does, he misuses. But let me know what you think, and if you have a better answer, put it in the comments below. And while you're down there, you can like, subscribe, and do all of the YouTube stuff. You're on YouTube, you know what to do. And if you like what I do, you can buy me a coffee. That link is in the description below. And I am so happy to be done with this, the worst list of questions for atheists ever. These have nothing to do with atheism. I'm not even sure that he asked why we were atheists. When do the bars open? I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.